This is one of the 3 worst teams in the league. I think that they would be the worst team in the AFC. So, like, I think the Raiders are better, and we kind of think, like, the Raiders might be the worst team.
Or Denver.
The Jets are so much better than the Giants. The Giants... Daniel Jones would have to get peeled off the turf with a spatula against the Jets defense with this offensive line. Jones wouldn't survive that game against Quinnen Williams. Like, he might die on the field. Like, Jones ain't survived. The Jets are 50 times. The Broncos are better. The only 2 teams you compare the Giants with are the Panthers and the Bears. Quite the plot twist after a playoff berth and being a Final Four team in the NFC last year. And it's like, I guess, like, part of me is annoyed because I'm a fan, but also it's, like, kind of incredible that they're this bad. I've been watching football obsessively for over 30 years. I've never seen an offensive line as bad as this one, and it's not hyperbole. It's the worst offensive line I've ever seen. Now, they got to get some guys back, and we'll see how it is then. Also, they were healthy in week 1, and the Cowboys made them look like Swiss cheese. I get that it's Dallas. This is brutal and could be spiraling way out of control and in a hurry. And there's a lot of big picture, like, New York, like, Giant-specific questions to ask. Like, is Dable actually as good a coach as we thought he was last year? If this is what this is now a month into the season, is Dable actually like a great coach? Is Joe Shane actually a good general manager? Because right now, this kind of has the look and the feel, Ken, and I don't think you have to be a Giants fan, just like a football observer, and we'll turn this into a betting conversation as we move along. I think that this has the potential to get real sideways here for the New York Football Giants with what is, and I said this in the first segment, and I mean it, it's the worst offensive line I've ever seen. I mean, think about Daniel Jones has been just under relentless pressure the first month of the season to the point that players on other teams are taking shots at Jones and the offensive line. Like Eric Armstead, like the stud Niners defensive tackle, tweeting like overnight basically or last night, why did Daniel Jones have to get rid of the ball so quickly against us? We could have all had career days last week, rushing the passer, interceptions, etc. So like you don't see that often where players on other teams are actively mocking the quarterback, the offensive line, and the team. I've seen, Ken, in my lifetime since 1990, since I started watching, I've seen some bad Giants teams. Ray Hanley had a couple of bad ones succeeding Bill Parcells, obviously. The 2 Reeves teams in 95 and 96 were brutal. The 4-12 team in Fossils last year that got the Giants the pick that they would trade to get Eli Manning, that's terrible. The 3-13 year with McAdoo and then Spagnuolo. The entire Judge Shermer era, absolutely terrible. I don't know, man. Like, this team's 1-3. I think there's a case to be made, Ken, that this is actually the worst team in the National Football League. You cannot win at the professional level if your offensive line blocks like they're in the Pac-12. And honestly, like, I think I'm actually like insulting the Pac-12 by comparing this offensive line to the Pac-12. You can't win. You just can't win. So, yeah, they're terrible, and I think that this might get worse before it gets better for the Giants.
We could have a conversation. I have not seen an updated market for worst record in the league, fewest wins, where obviously you have some heavy hitters ahead of the Giants. You have the Panthers and the Bears, who we can compare this team to. Maybe you have some other teams that end up kind of falling apart late in the year. Maybe you have a team like Cincinnati that enters that discussion if Burrow ends up sitting out a bunch of games. So it's kind of like, do you have a way you want to play this? I guess would be like my question. Like, after all of that vitriol, and you're right in everything that you said, like, is there anything to do? I guess is my question.
I guess, well, I just, one more, like vitriol-esque comment. Like, Jones, I don't think is great. Well, like, no quarterback is going to have success behind if this is going to, what the offensive line is going to be.
And he's mobile. He got sacked 11 times, and he's extremely mobile.
He's playing like, I don't think he's great. He's playing, I think people confuse this because I wrote that last night. I tweeted, like, the offensive line's terrible. Jones is not good, but also the line's terrible. Everyone's like, oh, you're making excuses for him again. It's like, no, like, I don't think he's great. Also, like, Tom Brady wouldn't have success behind this offensive line. It's impossible. You can't win. You just can't. I don't know how I want to play it. Well, let's see if this spread against Miami gets way out of control. I don't know what the hell I want to do with that game. I don't think it's bet the Giants, but maybe we'll see if this line keeps going up. It's 11 right now. Maybe it's 13. We'll see what happens over the course of the week. Giants get a more favorable injury report. I'm not really sure if there's anything to do, Ken, other than kind of bet them on a week in, week out basis. I guess it would be when worst team gets posted. You know, the Bears are brutal. The Panthers are brutal. if the Giants' offensive line is going to play like that, I think the Giants are actually the worst team. Like, I don't think that. Like, the Giants are more talented than both of those teams, I think. Maybe not, actually, if this is what it's going to be. I think there's a chance that the Giants have the number 1 pick in the draft. It probably won't be them, but they're the 3rd worst team in the league right now. I think they would be the worst team in the AFC, for sure, if they were in the AFC. And then I think you just compare them with Carolina and Chicago. So maybe that would be the market I would target, Ken, would be worst record.
I mean, if you're going to tell me this is like 5.5, 6.5, I don't know. Like, what is a realistic win total for this team now this season? 4? Maybe a 4.
So let's.
They have one
even if you wanted to construct like best case scenario, it's like 6. If there's a 6.5, like I don't know. That feels like very wrong to me. Like, best case, I think this team wins 5 more games. Best case for the Giants.
And I know it sounds like we're overreacting, like it's the day after a game. It's like, I think we're just being realistic. Like, we answered a question last night, and the answer was terrible.
The answer was we lose money and the Giants might be the worst team in the league.
One question about the Giants real quick. Updated win total in the market. So obviously they played terrible last night. They're 1-3, Miami and Buffalo the next 2 weeks. How bad is this going to get? The updated win total for them, I was just checking around in the break, 5.5. The updated win total for the New York Giants. Based on what you've seen so far, and Nick and I were kind of having a conversation, is this like a rock bottom kind of a team? Do you think they're ever going to go over that number? What would you do the rest of the year with the Giants after what we saw last night?
Yeah, I don't think they're going over that number. I think they'll get 5. That's a bad football team. Now, in fairness to the offensive line, they got major injury there. Left tackle's not there. The center went out. I mean, and the guards have been rotating in and out all year. So there are offensive line issues, but I don't think that fixes them either. I just don't. I think they're just so limited on what they can do offensively. And, Daniel Jones looks like his clock has been sped up because of that offensive line. I mean, all he has to do is stand in the pocket and throw the ball to the back of the pylon, and Waller has a touchdown. It's 14-10, and instead he panics and throws a pass way too quicker than he should have, and it's 6-6, and the game's over. So little things have sped him up, and little things are ultimately what undoes teams, and that offensive line is an issue.
Pete, fill in the blank. The New York Football Giants are the blank worst team in the National Football League.
27, 28, 29, depending on the week. I mean, they're bad. It's a bad team, but there's a lot of bad teams. The Bears are bad. The Broncos won last week, but they're bad. Carolina's bad. I mean, there's a lot of bad teams. The Jets aren't very good, even though they played better on Sunday night. They're not very good either. So, depending on the week, and the next 2 aren't going to be pretty, so it's going to be problematic for the Giants. So they'll probably be even a little lower than that.
Every time I try to make a case for the Giants in some kind of Saquon plays and Thomas plays, and the Dolphins do have a vulnerability, I just picture Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle running all these crossing routes against this miserable defense that, by the way, the whole Dolphins offense is designed around players in space who are hard to tackle, and the Giants can't tackle anybody. So it's just how many Tyreek 80-yard weaving touchdown catches are we going to see in this game? It just seems like a disaster, and it's rated in the market like a disaster. So for right now, I think I'm doing nothing.
And I guess you're right with what you're saying. What's the Giants' path to at least keeping the game close? Keep the ball out of Tua's hands, run the ball effectively with Saquon Barkley, chew the clock. Let's say I'm going to construct a scenario. Giants receive the opening kickoff. They go down the field. They take 6 minutes off the clock. The drive stalls at the 35-yard line. Graham Cano kicks a 52-yard field goal.
So every game that's happened so far this year.
Except the Giants wouldn't score. But let's say Cano makes the field goal, right? 3-0 Giants. Great. Kickoff to Miami. 3 plays, 75 yards, 7-3. Game over, and you're not covering the spread either. So that's the thing. It's okay, they could hold the ball, keep the ball out of Tua's hands. Great, the Dolphins are going to get the ball and score in 2 minutes every single time against this defense. It just, I don't know what number I would need to bet the Giants. I don't think it's anywhere close to this. I don't know if there's anything to do here. Maybe the Dolphins just win this game 35-3. I don't know. I think this is going to be a game that I'm going to be off of right now, right?
It's just really funny because you look at the teams on a sheet of paper and you go the Giants look as bad as a team can look. It's not really about that. It's just I actually think it's more about what is Miami? And I think we're all going to remember the 70-point game, right? Like, that's what you're worried about happening here. If you click the button on the Giants, it's the first thing in your head is like, I am literally betting plus 10.5 on against a team that just scored 70 a couple weeks ago and blew a team out. You just like look at the Dolphins, and part of this is that like they played the Bills, and the Bills ran up every stat imaginable against them. Like, the Dolphins defense is really bad on third down. The Dolphins defense is really bad this was true against the Chargers too, by the way, and kind of true against the Patriots. Really bad on third down, really bad in the red zone. The problem is, like, are the Giants the team that's going to take advantage of all of these things? like you actually, maybe you want the Dolphins to kind of like just roll here, kick the can down the road on like trying to bet against Miami a couple more times this year in some other situations. Like, maybe that's it. There are ways you can beat Miami. Buffalo showcased a whole bunch of them, and the Chargers showcased a lot of them, to be fair, too. I just would have no confidence the Giants can do any of those things. And if they're ever trailing, now it's Jones dropping back to pass with the offensive line again. And it's just like, you can't, like you won't win. You won't win against any team doing that. So it makes it really tough.
I want to give a prop thought on this game, and then we'll get to the Chiefs and Vikings coming up next segment. So it's starting to happen for the Giants. And again, if the offensive line is bad, like, none of this actually matters. But if Andrew Thomas is going to be back, and like, we'll see about Schmitz, we'll see about some of like the other offensive line injuries for the Giants. Jalen Hyatt played a lot last night. Like, it's going to start happening for Jalen Hyatt if Daniel Jones can get some good pass protection. And this is like, I'll give myself a little credit. Like, I got a terrible bet last night on the over. Like, drilled the props in last night's game. Tyler Lockett goes over, and Wan'Dale Robinson was an easy over playing over Paris Campbell last night. So I'm curious to see, like, Wan'Dale can't be priced anymore like 19.5, 20.5. And if he is, we'll bet the over, and I think we'll win every week moving forward now. So I do think that you'll get more Wan'Dale and more Jalen Hyatt. The Giants desperately need both of those players to start popping to keep games close, especially against an elite offense.